Nano Machine by Hanjo Wheelia. Chapter 454. The Fallen Spirit Beast. Part 1. The god of the East was flustered. Beads of sweat were forming on Chen Yuan's forehead as he looked at his opponent. The technique Chen Yuan was using had multiple overlappings, and the amount of energy that it consumes couldn't be small. About 3/4 of the energy generated after taking in a core would get consumed. Imbuing two attributes into one invisible sword isn't enough, and concentrating it at one point would be a huge waste. For now, 3 or 4 times was the limit. However, the power was beyond the imagination, severely injuring the god of the East's right arm, with a small attack too. It was truly a technique that was fearsome to face. Indeed, you are great. Try stopping this too. I'll shoot them the same way again. Chen Yuan spoke those words. If it was any normal person, Chen Yuan would have killed them, but since the god of the East was great and he acknowledged the power and capabilities of the man who achieved it all with his own strength, he said that. Although he was preventing Chen Yuan from entering the mountain, he didn't want to risk his life against a true warrior like the god of the East. Chen Yuan's intentions seemed to work to some extent. If there is another offensive attack like that, blocking it would be impossible. In addition, one arm was twisted, and the muscles seemed to be strained, so it was difficult for him to fight. In terms of a swordsman, it was like holding a broken sword. However, if the purpose of this confrontation was to simply compete for a winner and loser, then accepting defeat would be best. This battle is won by you. Just like it was said, the old water of the Yangtze River gets pushed to the front because of the stronger new water. You're stronger than Chen Mahjong of your cult. Lord Chen Mahjong? Chen Yuan frowned at the words which came out of the god of the East's mouth. It was a name he had heard a lot. It must have been the name of a past lord. No. Did the god of the East know my father? Chen Yingji, who was hearing his words, eyes widened. Chen Mahjong was a former lord and his father. When Chen Yingji was active in the cult, he knew that the god of the East is one of the 5 strongest warriors, but he didn't know that he shared a relationship with his father. Just how old? Ugh. Although he had white hair, he only looked like a middle-aged man. Even if he reverted back to a younger age, this man had to be over 100 years old. He is a warrior from the same generation as great-grandfather. That is why his martial arts are so pure. The man had reached this point in his life because of his ability. And he is so skilled because of his age. And his understanding of Chen Yuan and his men was probably because he had already met cultists in the past. The god of the East, who held his breath, sighed. Although he acknowledged his opponent's victory, his eyes were full of determination. He wasn't willing to give up. Why was he trying to stop people from entering Changbai Mountain? You were acquainted with my great-grandfather? When he realized how old the man was, Chen Yuan showed his respects to him. To that, the man shook his head and replied. We weren't acquainted. We just competed a couple times. That can be considered as a relationship too. But what I want to know is why are you stopping us from entering Changbai Mountain? In response to Chen Yuan's question, Arui pursed his lips before opening them. Here in Changbai Mountain, there are creatures that others can't hold. I'm guarding this place to prevent people from encountering those beings. Ah. Chen Yuan's eyes lit up. The words of Master Wu Chun from the Shaolin Temple were true. It wasn't that he was stopping people. Rather, Arui was trying to protect people from something hidden inside. Are you talking about that crazy-eyed one? Clearly, that man was dangerous. The power he held was completely different from normal warriors, and it was the first time that Chen Yuan had experienced such a murderous intent with so much hatred. He was someone who could be called the Great Deathbringer. At Chen Yuan's question, Arui answered. Right. That's the existence which is dangerous because it's been toiling in hatred, anger, and murderous intent for years. At that, Chen Yuan asked. Indeed, the existence, so it doesn't have a human body? At that, Arui seemed troubled. The battle was stopped abruptly, but since he already fought it, Arui had no choice but to tell him. Especially since its body was transforming. By any chance, a fallen spirit beast? It was a strange thought, but that's what he thought. There were a lot of confusing things, like the way the man used wind. It clearly looked like he could control the wind. It could be that the man absorbed the core of the Feng Bo, White Tiger, but that didn't feel like the right answer. Looking at Changbai Mountain, where the man had disappeared to, Chen Yuan said. You said it was to prevent people from encountering that existence. Did I look like I was in trouble? When the fight was stopped abruptly, Chen Yuan had the upper hand. Besides, Chen Yuan hadn't gone all out. Arui thought for a while. This person is certainly different. He wasn't someone who had to be protected. It was the first time that this happened, so he was worried about what he had to say. In his mind, he remembered the mutation. As long as I live and guard this place, I hope to keep people out, hoping for purification. If his eyes weren't wrong, Arui hadn't degraded in skill. But then, one day, he would end up becoming weak and lose in the battle against that man, and he would run out to massacre the people of Jianghu. Thinking about it, I was hoping to send that man to hell with my own hands. But it was harder in his current state. It was the 10th year, and his arm, which was hurt, wouldn't heal right away. Of course, even if he did his best, the result would be unknown because of his current condition, but if he lost, that being would break out of the mountain. After sighing, Arui, who had been lost in thought, opened his mouth. Is your purpose also the core of the spirit beast? A straightforward question. The people who came to Changbai Mountain only had one purpose. It was to gain the core of the spirit beast, the Feng Bo, to increase their power. Regardless of the faction, that was the truth. Will you, like everyone else, explain the validity of taking the core with a cause? Those who tried to obtain the core were all the same, saying that they couldn't let it fall into someone else's hands, so they came to take the core for themselves. The reason was the same for everyone. But do you think there is another reason for coming here? Huh? Chen Yuan didn't deny it. Since the Yulin troops were diplomatic, he thought that this person, who seemed like the lord of the demonic cult, would come up with some reason, but he didn't. You don't even try to hide your greed. It would be better that way. Rather than trying to make a false justification, he was honest. But it seems like you have obtained many cores. Why are you being so greedy? He couldn't understand it. The existence of the Feng Bo was well known, so many people aimed for it. However, the other spirit beasts were rather difficult to find, and if he could take away those cores, then he didn't have to aim for this one. If it's you, no one in Jianghu would be able to win against you, so why covet this core too? In addition, since Chen Yuan had multiple cores, he would live for a long time. There was no need for such excessive greed. Chen Yuan thought seriously about the questions Arui asked. He wouldn't believe it if I say that it's to prevent the Blade Lord from obtaining immortality. He hadn't even told that to his subordinates. Who would believe that nonsense? Recently, there is a rise of a clan called the Blade God Six Martial Clan, which began to grow suddenly. Their head is aiming for eternal life. Quang. Just then, they heard a loud roar. Arui looked shocked at the sound. It came from the side of Changbai Mountain. At the peak, there was a vast lake, and he could see a column of water rising. Swoosh! What was that just now? Shocked, he looked around as the sound echoed. Growl! The sound of a tiger roaring from the peak of the mountain. Chen Yuan looked over there with sharp eyes. Is that the white tiger? That wasn't a roar that a human could produce. Is he breaking the oath? He was puzzled for a moment at the incomprehensible mumble from Arui, who immediately moved. Tat. His expression was serious as he was trying to reach the peak. At the top was the place where that man lived. He didn't know what happened, but the cry meant that something terrible had happened. Swoosh! Swoosh! As he hurried, he heard someone catch up to him. Arui glanced to the side to see Chen Yuan. The excellent display of martial arts. Was that the white tiger? At Chen Yuan's question, Arui nodded his head without saying anything. Chen Yuan spoke. It looks like we were hit on the back of our heads by the Blade God 6 martial clan while we were fighting. Blade God 6 martial clan? Come to think of it, Arui had heard the people of the Yulin utter the same name. It was something he wasn't concerned about because whoever it was, he had no intention of letting them into the mountain. The situation has gone out of control. It has to be stopped. It would be dangerous if the cord gets into the hands of the Blade God 6, not that. That man should never be allowed to turn into his original form. Chen Yuan thought that Arui was concerned about the core falling into others' hands, but what he heard was completely unexpected. Of course, he thought it was because Arui didn't know about the Blade God 6 martial clan. With their power, hunting the spirit beast wasn't a difficult task. Goo! This, what the hell? Chen Yuan looked at Changbai Mountain with trembling eyes. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, which looked clear until a second back. He couldn't help but be shocked by it. To that, Arui spoke. It's a spirit beast which has lived for nearly 1,000 years and has ascending in the ranks. A monster which should never be released into this world. Creepy. A horrendous energy engulfed the mountain. Above the peak of Changbai Mountain, which was covered with dark clouds, an infinitely dark and huge tiger appeared. Chapter 455. The Fallen Spirit Beast. Part 2. Feng Bo. One of the 5 spirit beasts. Among the 5, the Feng Bo, white tiger, was the only beast whose habitat was known. To the east, in Changbai Mountain. It was written in one of the 3 great books. Many details of the 5 spirit beasts were described in the book called the Book of Spirits. However, it was said that the 5 of them, the spirit beasts, live for many years, and when their spiritual power reaches a certain point, they rise to a higher level. It was meant to denote that they reach a level of supremacy when they reach enlightenment and ascend to the realm of the gods. There was a passage in it that says that a normal person or even a master who cultivates internal energy can obtain enlightenment and turn into a deity. An example would be Elder Zhang Sambong of the Wudong clan. Swoosh! Near the entrance of the mountain, 2 humans were traversing the forest with great speed. Is what I'm thinking right? At Chen Yuan's question, Arui nodded his head. The shadow of the giant tiger seen from afar was under the clouds. As the name Feng Bo, which means white tiger, implies, the existence, which should have been white with black stripes, was engulfed in darkness. Pitch black darkness. As he couldn't ascend, his power eroded with anger and hatred. It turned into that. Arui still hadn't forgotten about that time. The transformation of the white tiger, who was crying in anger. It was a process in which the sacred spirit inside Changbai Mountain, which he knew, turned into a monster that could destroy everything. Chen Yuan frowned at the words of Arui. I feel like I saw it somewhere. Chen Yuan looked at the black wrist guard on his right arm. Sky Demon Sword. When he first got it, he saw a man cutting down the horns of the Imugi, which was about to ascend to heaven as a dragon. At that time, the white body of the Imugi had turned dark. The mysterious figure in white disappeared, and in its place came a ferocious monster that was killed by Chen Ma. Was the Imugi corrupted too? It looked that way. The spirit beasts who were supposed to gain spiritual power and ascend to heaven lost their lives. It has to be like that. He felt that Amugi was different as all he saw were images of it. However, the Amugi, which had turned into a monster, was something that could split the earth and heaven too. The more I know, the more I feel like Chunma had reached the level of a god. It was also the case with the word sword, which was engraved on the old tablet. With a single character, he managed to subdue all the swordsmen. At what level was that possible? Chen Yuan, who remembered something, asked. Was it possible that the white tiger was forcibly obstructed from ascending? At that question, Arkui's expression hardened. It seemed like several things had happened. Chen Yuan, who thought it must be something personal, decided not to ask further questions when Arui opened his mouth with a bitter expression. He lost his precious friend over 100 years ago. Friend? Yes. He was a friend of mine too. 100 years had passed, but he still remembered him. He was a relative and friend with whom life and death could be shared with. He was such a fun person that even the guardian of Changbai Mountain, which everyone was afraid of, turned towards him. If he hadn't died in vain, this wouldn't have happened. Arui felt regret. His death had many repercussions. To the extent where even a spirit beast gave up on his ascension and got corrupted. Grr. A great roar from the tiger could be heard again. As he looked at the sky covered in dark clouds, Arui bit his lip as he watched the beast rage in anger. The guy who hadn't broken his oath for 100 years reverted to his original body. Why on earth did he break the oath he made himself? What provoked him, was it? He looked at the peak of the mountain. He raised his energy to get a clear view as he moved faster. Meanwhile, on the peak of the mountain, swoosh! Wing! The vast lake, which was reflecting the sky, was covered in dark clouds, which swayed the waves violently. Grugu! Whoa! My ears! Numerous warriors of the Blade God 6 martial clan were near the lake, covering their ears. Just the roar made their stomachs drop. Even those who were supposed to be strong were on the ground coughing up blood, while others' ears were bleeding. Thud. Thud. The man in bandages glanced at the warriors who had fallen. He was baffled to see how the situation turned out. That monster is the white tiger? The monster in front of him was 30 meters tall. This monster, with its red eyes and ferocious energy, had the shape of a tiger, but it was completely different from the white tiger they had heard about. Tack. Ha, ha, damn it. I have no idea what the hell that thing is. A bald old man sat next to the man in bandages. The old man was covered in cold sweat as he held onto his left shoulder. His left arm, stained with blood, was torn off by the huge claws, and it looked like his arm would fall off at any moment. Former Lord, are you alright? Would anyone be alright? I just lost an arm. How could a normal-looking human even turn into a monster? The old man called the former lord, who tried to stop the man's mutation, was hit. He tried to subdue it, thinking that it was some kind of blood reversion art, but it ripped off his arm. Huang Heol. What the hell is that monster? It was supposed to be huge, but it's too huge. They heard that the tiger is supposed to be 3 times the size of a regular tiger. Of course, they knew that as the spiritual energy increased, the spirit beast would grow, but this was close to being a monster. Tack. At the time, someone approached Huang Heol. An old man wearing a golden eye patch, he was Wu, a former lord of the clan. He too was shocked at the roaring beast. I don't know what that is. But does this mean that the man we saw before is the monster? Are you blind just because you only have one eye? The bald man asked, annoyed. Former Lord Wu kept his mouth shut, realizing that it must be hard for the other man as he just lost his arm. Huang Heol was at a loss for words. That black monster is really the Fengbo? The white tiger? Arriving near the mountain, they knew that a battle was taking place in the north and took the opportunity to climb up the mountain. In the process of searching for the spirit beast, they met an unknown person. It was a person who seemed to be annoyed, and the moment he saw them, he attacked them. Dirty worms, keep invading my MT Baekdu. I'm going to kill you all. He didn't speak Chinese. At first, they thought that this man was protecting the mountain. However, they were shocked to see him unfold techniques that didn't belong to Jianghu. That man's techniques were as dangerous as their clan's. They never expected such a person to be hiding in the mountain along with the god of the east. No more. I'll take you all down. Although he was injured, the man had the ability to annihilate half of the troops and the left arm of their former lord. He was unscathed despite fighting against two former lords. However, the man who was attacking suddenly turned into a beast. KKUAAKKKK. Kwang. Kwak. Yuk. Move. When the black tiger roared, dozens of people lost their lives. It wasn't something that martial arts could overcome. It was safe to say that the monster is a natural disaster. About 1,000 people were attacked, and most of them died pointlessly. Wing. What's happening now? Another strange thing happened in the sky where rain and dark clouds had formed. The dark clouds gathered around the giant black tiger, and mist began to form, which soon took the shape of a tornado. Wing. Why wind? It wasn't just one. For tornadoes appeared as if dragons were moving around trying to protect the black tiger. Hundreds of people got swept away in an instant by the tornadoes. Ack. Help me. Even those who were excellent warriors were no exception. The tornadoes were different from a natural disaster. Every time the tornado spun, it was as if swords were attacking. Clash. Kook. Ugh. How is the wind this sharp? Everyone. Move away from the tornadoes. The masters and the warriors spread out in all directions. Even a simple gust of wind was killing them. This was not something they could deal with. Huang Hiao mumbled. How can, this is so different. They were all there during the battle with the great bird. But even the great bird didn't seem this strong. In comparison, it was the difference between an adult and a child. Kwaaya. Creepy. It roared again. It was when the two former lords and Huang Hiao were trying to figure out how to attack it. Oh ho! Is this the fallen spirit that I've only heard of? Beyblade Lord. The three people were shocked to see their lord appear with a bamboo hat. He said that it would take longer to join them as he would take care of the Yulin troops, but they didn't expect him to come this quick. This meant that this man had tremendous power, which took down the Yulin. You came? Blade Lord. Everyone bowed to the man at the same time. Ignoring that, the man called Blade Lord looked at the tiger surrounded by tornadoes. What are we? I will go. Huh? Fat. Before they could even question him, the man flew into the air. The Blade Lord, who was floating in the air, reached the vicinity of the tornadoes, which were blocking the huge tiger. The Blade Lord pretended to cut down the tornadoes with his hand. Whoa! Huge invisible energy rose as his hand slashed down the tornadoes in an instant. Slash! The warriors who watched it began to cheer. Blade Lord! Whoa! He cut down the tornadoes. And no! They haven't been taken down yet. Wing! The tornadoes didn't die down. The parts which got cut soon began to reconnect. That was what he was aiming for. Swoosh! He aimed to pass through the brief gap which formed in the tornado. With the sword he pulled out from his waist, he leaped, aiming it at the chest of the huge black tiger. Visor! The tiger roared at the appearance of the man and raised its front paws to strike him. Grr. Wing. Just by extending its sharp claws, huge wind pressure was created. The right front paw moved, wanting to kill everything in front of it. He shifted his approach, cleared his breath, and wielded his sword. Whoa! At that moment, space shook in the direction where he was wielding his sword, which contained an enormous, concentrated power. Bang! Part of the black tiger's right front paw hit the sword and bounced up. The black tiger roared in pain as one of its paws got cut off. Quack! The Blade Lord's lips formed into a smile. This is payback for what you did 20 years ago. It was his growth after what he faced in the past. After 20 years, the Blade Lord was able to take down the opponent. Fat. I'll cut off that head of yours just like this. Fat. Fat. Not missing the opportunity, the Blade Lord aimed for the neck of the black tiger. Across pouring rain, his figure moved. It was then. Quack. No. Huge wind erupted from the mouth of the black tiger and attacked the Blade Lord. It was wind that could cut down a mountain. The Blade Lord immediately created a huge invisible sword. But the pressure was too strong, he got pushed down to the bottom of the lake. Thud. Blade Lord. The ones who were watching it shouted in surprise. But that wasn't the end of the surprise. No? The tiger raised its intact front paw and stomped it into the lake. Thud. Splash. Thud. Its heavy paw created a new image of the lake. It was aiming to kill the Blade Lord. The two eyes of the black tiger gleamed in red as it looked down at the lake. How dare you? Former Lord Wu, wearing the golden patch, was so angry that he tried to attack it. It was then. JJJJKKK. The water in the lake, which was raging, began to freeze. From the place where the black tiger had stepped. It froze so quickly that the tiger couldn't react. JJKKKK. As the cold began to seep up to the paw, it lifted its paw. The ice shattered as the paw was lifted from the lake, and at that moment the Blade Lord jumped out. JJJJKKK. Then, two invisible swords appeared with ice chi in the air and stabbed the black tiger in the chest. The core. As the ice chi swords touched the center of the tiger's chest, the tiger roared and released its energy to deflect the swords, but the ice chi which had penetrated into its body spread. JJJKKK. Kuwawayak. The tiger howled in pain as it tried twisting its body and swinging its paws. The body of the Blade Lord, who was concentrating on the ice chi in the tiger's body, bounced back. Bang! Quack! In an instant, the body of the Blade Lord bounced back 30 meters or so. He was quite shocked at it, seeing how blood flowed from the corner of his lips. However, since he absorbed a core, he managed to recover from his injuries, and his complexion brightened. You are quite rebellious. If it used a little more energy, he would have gotten crushed. It was the moment when he was about to move again and strike it down. Startle. From the north, immense energy was felt as it merged with the tornado and pierced the chest of the huge black tiger, which was suffering from the ice chi. Quack. Quack. All eyes turned to what pierced into the chest. Crackle. A ray of black lightning passed through the tiger's chest and then disappeared. The black tiger, which got hit again, twisted its body. Bang! 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 As it wriggled in pain, the fragments of the frozen lake went everywhere. What's going on? What was that just now? It was that moment when everyone was equally confused. The eyes of the warriors of the Blade God's 6 martial clan focused on one place. The place where the huge chest of the tiger was open wide, and something was shining in it. That core. The core was shining brightly. But it wasn't just the core. Eyes gleamed from the pierced chest to someone in black armor who stood there. The armor that seemed soaked in the blood moved away from the black tiger, which was crying out in pain. Whoa! As if he could walk on air, the one in the black armor moved a couple more steps away. The helmet of the armor disappeared, revealing the face behind it. Long hair fluttered in the wind and rain. The demon god. Huang Heol shouted at the man he recognized. What? The demon god? The two former lords were shocked at the man being called the demon god. Amid everyone's attention, Chen Youwen smiled and shouted to everyone who had gone silent. You all did good. The face of the Blade Lord, who was on the mountain, distorted terribly. Chapter 456. The Fallen Spirit Beast. Part 3. It took nearly 100 years to purify him. As per his friend's words, all he had to do was return to his original state and climb up. But it all looks unreasonable now. It was Arui who had given up 100 years of his life. However, the hatred and resentment inside the white tiger didn't weaken but instead grew. Its appearance now is much closer to the form it took 100 years ago, and the hatred inside it was all being directed to the Jianghu. The guy who threw off the shackles created by the oath returned to his own body, which will stain the entire place in blood. Just like the six-headed dragon spirit which almost annihilated the entire Jianghu region during the days of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Spirit beasts who have reached the highest point would be dangerous and difficult to kill. The only opportunity to kill him would be when he cannot take his original form even after 100 years. In a bitter voice, Arui asked Chen Youwen. This is the calling that was originally for me, but if it doesn't work, kill him with your hands. It was unclear if Arui would be able to kill the beast or not. Judging that he might fail due to his injured right arm, he asked Chen Youwen. You won't regret it? I was holding on to him with affection and cause. But now it won't be possible, and I can't let innocent people of Jianghu get killed. Arkui's words were resolute. He didn't care about the deaths of the warriors or the leaders. However, he didn't like the idea of innocent people getting killed. You are a true friend. Chen Youwen admired Arkui's intentions. He seemed a lot better than the warriors of the forces of justice who advocate justice. Such a person was the one warriors respected. Understood. I'll hurry up and return your favor. Huh? Chen Youwen's words made Arui wonder. Arui had hurt his right arm, his body was out of balance, and he wasn't able to speed up either. Even if he punched the air, he doubted that it would be with his full force. What could he even do? It was then. Satsu. Something began to generate from Chen Youwen's body, and it turned into black armor. Arkui's eyes widened at it. It shouldn't have been a big deal, but he was just shocked to see Chen Youwen suddenly wear armor which even covered his face. I'm going ahead. Whoa! White smoke appeared from the feet of the armor, and he was pushed into the air. Whoa! What was that? Arui was stunned as he looked at Chen Youwen. Chen Youwen, who flew towards the peak at once, saw someone competing with the giant black tiger. He was someone who was able to make full use of his abilities and focused energy at one point, just like the god of the east. Moreover, this man could freeze the lake in an instant. It must have been the one who absorbed the core of the great bird. Is that person the head of the Blade God's 6 martial clan? Chen Youwen remembered the words that his grandfather spoke. He said that the Blade Lord, the head of the clan, had gone to the Padala Palace with all his forces to obtain the core of the great bird. Blade Lord. In the meantime, the man Chen Youwen was so curious about had finally appeared. And he somehow aimed for the fallen white tiger. What is he aiming for? Nano. Find the place where the core of the black tiger is concentrated. Understood. Nano began to analyze it in augmented reality. when a cross-shaped target was painted on its chest. A lot of energy is concentrated in the thorax that goes down the black tiger's neck. Nice. There was no way he could lose the core of the white tiger. And it was a great opportunity as the Blade Lord was weakened by the blow. If I intervene in the middle, I wouldn't be able to do this or that, and I'd get caught between the Spirit Beast and the Blade Lord. There was a simple way to do that. First, he had to take the core of the white tiger. It would make the Blade God 6 Martial Clan angry if they who had been aiming for the core and fighting against the black tiger all this time saw the core enter Chen Yuan's hands. Cow-wow. It wasn't just because its chest was hit, but the black tiger, which had been hit near its core, twisted its body and cried out. Since the core, where all its spiritual energy is gathered, was being taken away, perhaps it was the same as destroying a martial artist's dantian. This should be better than letting those people take it away. Chen Yuan looked at the core, which was emitting a brilliant light. Just a touch, and he could feel its great energy. Seeing Chen Yuan float in the air, Huang Heo, who was initially bewildered, yelled in anger. Demon God! Isn't that something you should be ashamed of? Only cowardly people do things like pickpocketing. Unlike him, the former lords on either side were different. The fact that he broke into the middle of the fight and took the core was infuriating, but the overwhelming energy they felt was petrifying. The power of that blow was terrifying. Even their Blade Lord had failed to penetrate the tiger's body, despite connecting on several blows. However, the demon god, Chen Yuan, made a hole in the chest with just a single blow, even if it was a surprise attack. He's more of a monster than I've heard. Huh. He can't be dealt with without the Blade Lord. It makes sense for the 6 martial masters to keep losing. Huang Heo frowned at the words of the former lords, who were supposed to be the best in the clan. Even if Chen Yuan was a monster, the core shouldn't fall into his hands. Even so, we need to kill him here. According to the records left behind by that person, this must. Before Huang Heo could finish speaking, the warriors shouted. Blade Lord! The Blade Lord has come! Whoa! Shh. Suddenly, the Blade Lord appeared in the air in front of Chen Yuan. The Blade Lord, whose bamboo hat got torn, was revealed to be a middle-aged man with a short beard. And a horrible expression showing how angry he was. Demon God! Blade Lord pretended to swing his hand. Then, in front of him, invisible energy gathered, giving off a sharp feel, and it moved with the momentum to cut Chen Yuan in half. Clang! However, it couldn't cut him. It was blocked by an invisible sword that emerged in the air. Chow. However, in the aftermath of the collision between the invisible swords, pressure threw some people, while others had to get out of their vicinity. Ah, amazing! Move! Everyone, keep your distance! Quang! The aftermath of it was trees and the grass on the ground being uprooted. So this was how dangerous a battlefield would be when 2 people of the highest level would fight. The warriors of the Blade God 6 martial clan all moved away at once. The Blade Lord opened his mouth. Demon God! Hand over the core. His gaze was on the core, which was in Chen Yuan's left hand. Maybe it was because he lost what he was aiming for. He had a grim expression. However, Chen Yuan said something weird. You, who are you? The Blade Lord raised his eyebrows, puzzled by what was asked. At his level, he thought that Chen Yuan would naturally recognize his existence and title. I'm the current head, who stands at the apex. Shoo! Blade Lord moved forward, maintaining his invisible sword, and tried to attack Chen Yuan. It was the 5th form of the extreme art of the Blade God. Normally he was someone who would unfold a technique with the sleekest movement, but now he didn't want to follow up the technique. Chow. Invisible sharp attacks came for Chen Yuan. At that, Chen Yuan slightly moved. It was then, his invisible sword created a dense sword net, blocking the form of the extreme art of the blade god. Don't use what you stole. Suddenly, the blade lord appeared from behind. It was an illusion skill of some kind. And he aimed for Chen Yuan's left arm, which was holding the core. Chen Yuan's actions were. This guy? The blade lord frowned as he looked at what he was aiming for with his sword. He didn't expect the core to be used as a defense by Chen Yuan. If the core got damaged in any other way than being absorbed, all its energy would be drained, and the core becomes useless. Then I'll cut off your head. The sword turned and aimed for Chen Yuan's neck. Startle. As soon as the sword was about to touch his neck, the blade lord jumped back. Swoosh. As soon as he moved, a blue ray of light fell to the ground where he was previously standing. It looked like a steel sword. He wondered if someone other than Chen Yuan was present and threw the sword at him. However, the ice sword covered in a blue hue floated in the air. An air sword made of steel like ice? The blade lord was shocked. He too had attained Dean and the core of the great bird. So, making an ice sword wasn't a difficult task, but no matter how much he concentrated, the sword didn't last long. Truly amazing. It's been 20 years since I met a warrior like you. He was truly amazed. With all reports he got about the demon god, he knew that the man was strong. However, he considered himself superior, but now Chen Yuan was a much more difficult opponent than he had expected. Then I can't lose the core. The blade lord raised his aim. Swoosh. Their entire surroundings became so cold that frost began to appear on the ground. Even the raindrops froze and fell to the ground. Drop. Cha. 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 Even if I can't work with sword chi, I can use this. The raindrops which froze all aimed for Chen Yuan. However, the numerous frozen raindrops that aimed to hit Chen Yuan stopped mid-air, making the blade lord frown. Did you erase my chi? Chen Yuan raised his hand and stretched it towards the blade lord. The ice drops and the cubes, which had stopped mid-air, turned around, heading towards the blade lord. How is this possible? Pang! The blade lord jumped to a higher position. Yet, all the frozen ice followed him. Is he manipulating the ice? No matter how strong this man was, there had to be a limit to what we could do, and what Chen Yuan was doing wasn't simple. However, Chen Yuan was controlling everything. But, it's just ice. Whoop! The blade lord created a huge invisible wall that broke the ice. Quack quack wang. Indeed, fighting against the demon god is truly meaningless. The blade lord, who was talking, went silent. While he was busy taking down the frozen rain around him, numerous ice swords covered in a blue hue surrounded him. Chen Yuan spoke with a smile. The sky flash isn't just a wide area technique. As soon as he finished speaking, the blue hue began to shine brighter, and the numerous ice swords which surrounded him rushed towards him. Swoosh! The eyes of the blade lord shuddered as he saw the ice swords coming in from all directions, without gaps. You bastard! The blade lord's face distorted as he began to concentrate on what was happening. He decided to unify his energy. Whoops! As if space was distorted, ripples rose around him, and numerous beams of light rushed towards him and were sucked into him, disappearing. This is how it stopped. Chen Yuan was shocked at Blade Lord's technique. He didn't seem much different from Arui. Rather, this man was more difficult to deal with as he had absorbed the core of the great bird and could take an ice chi. Is that even a confrontation between humans? This is my first time seeing such a battle. The two former lords, who were watching the confrontation between the two lords, couldn't hide their astonishment. It was impossible to keep their calm as they were witnessing such a high-level battle. Whoa, they are total monsters. The Blade Lord is being pushed like that? The same was true for the other warriors. The two people who were fighting in the air were so great that they couldn't take their eyes off of them. However, there was one variable in their confrontation. Kawak. The huge black tiger, which roared again, shattered their eardrums. Losing the core from its body, everyone thought that it would fall to the ground, but it only became angrier than before, rearing with blazing red eyes. No. The Blade Lord frowned at that too. The one whom the black tiger was staring at intently was Chen Yuan, who held its core. How didn't he die? He was skeptical, but he decided to deal with the most important task. The black tiger swung its huge front paw and tried to hit both Chen Yuan and the Blade Lord at the same time. It was that moment when the two of them were about to move away simultaneously. Bang! Kawak! The huge body of the black tiger, which was about to swing its front paw, fell under great pressure and bent its knees as it crashed into the frozen lake. As the massive tiger suddenly fell in, the ice shards bounced in all directions. Wondering what was happening, there was a figure between the eyes of the giant tiger, with his fist clenched. God of the East,